Hi there, welcome to a webinar titled Implicit Social Emotional Learning with HyperDocs. This is part 2 in a Emotional Wellness with HyperDocs mini-series. And today's focus is really going to be on how to tuck in those wellness practices into our everyday instruction. And I really think that the HyperDocs is like one of the tricks to do that. Now, in a previous webinar, I talked about how to use HyperDocs to teach explicit core competencies directly using HyperDocs. And today's a little shift in terms of sneaking in those little practices to take care of the hearts and minds of our students. So I want to begin with a video. This is one of my favorite videos titled Be a Mr. Jensen.
I have a lot of memories from when I was a child. One that's always stuck out to me though was when I was about 10 years old and I was in school and I struggled. And I didn't struggle with English, math, or science. I struggled holding still. And I would try to listen, focus, and process ideas, but I couldn't help myself. And to be honest, I would sit there and then I would just start tapping. And the students in the class would look at me and they'd say, "Hey, stop tapping." A lot of the time, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And then eventually even the teachers got after me and they would yell at me and they'd say, "Clint, you have to stop tapping." It got so bad that I got sent to the principal's office for tapping. And he said to me, "Okay, maybe when you go back to class, just try sitting on your hands." So I did. I went back to class. When I felt myself starting to tap, I did this. I sat on my hands. And that worked for about 5 seconds. One time I was tapping in class, and my teacher, Mr. Jensen, looked at me and he yelled. And he said, "Clint, stay after class." And I thought to myself, this is it. I am done. Now, I've always been the type of person that believes that a single moment in time can change a person's life. And this was one of those moments for me. And I will never forget it. So I was sitting there with Mr. Jensen and an empty classroom. He walked past me and he sat next to his desk and he said, "Clint, come here. Talk to you." And as he looked me right in the eye, he said, "Now, I need you to know something. You're not in trouble. But I do have just one question that I have to ask you." And he said, "Have you ever thought about playing the drums?" And in that moment, Mr. Jensen, he leaned back and he opened the top drawer of his desk. And he reached in and he pulled out my very first pair of drumsticks. And he held them in his hands and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, Clint, you're not a problem. I think you're a drummer." From that moment on, I've never put those sticks down. I've toured, recorded, played drums all over the world. My whole college education was paid for with drumsticks in my hand. Just because of a single moment in time, when somebody believed in me, and he saw something in me that I didn't even see within myself. And from that moment, I learned that there's a difference between being the best in the world and being the best for the world.
So I love that video because every time I watch it, it makes me realize that one of the most important things that we can do as a teacher is just to recognize our students as individuals and to not see them as problems, but to see them for maybe the hidden gifts or talents that they have. So I want you just for a quick second, if you'll indulge me in this webinar, to close your eyes for a moment and just think about a teacher who has had a tremendous impact on you as a young student, as a middle schooler, high schooler, or even as a college student. Just imagine a teacher or even a coach or someone you worked with who saw you, who really kind of helped you feel valued in some way. What was it that he or she did specifically to support you. The more you can kind of recall, the better. I just want you to be thinking about the qualities that make a teacher stand out and who maybe did that for you. You can kind of just write their name down. For me, it was Mrs. Gilfillan. She was my 4th grade teacher, and she is someone who I always imagine when I think about the kind of teacher that I want to be. It's the littlest things, and that is the intention of today's webinar, is to think about the little things that you can do, say, or just be that incorporates into your everyday lesson planning. So maybe there's a specific student that you're looking to support. You can certainly call that child to mind. You can even write his or her name down. But we want to be thinking about specific people that have influenced us as we think about our own lesson planning. Now, today's emphasis is on social emotional learning and how HyperDocs can be a solution for you. Now, during this pandemic schooling, there's a lot of kind of like trauma-based needs that have surfaced. I know when I look at these images, I think of solitude, I think of loss, grief, fear, all kinds of things. And that's kind of really one of the reasons why we need social emotional learning. And it's truly surfaced, but a long time ago, I learned about the impact of addressing those social emotional needs first if we ask or expect our students to actually take in real learning. What are the physiological needs? Safety, love, and belonging. How students see themselves, and then how can we help them reach that ultimate self-actualization. So, if there was a question of why we're here, hopefully that answers it for you. Whatever framework you're using or familiar with, whether it's UDL, where you're looking at truly how to engage the whole learner, then you see the place for social emotional learning in that framework. If you are working to implement the national health standards, which are put out by the CDC, you might maybe be focusing or zooming in on one or more of these specific standards. Or if you are trying to implement the CASEL 5 core competencies, CASEL stands for Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. These are their 5 core competencies, which most of our work is grounded in, although certainly we believe wholeheartedly that HyperDocs can be used to help you reach and teach any learner. So if you're not familiar with the CASEL competencies, this gives you a quick glimpse at what those look like, and I hope that you are thinking about your own role as the teacher and where you see strengths in your lesson planning and where you see some needs. Like if you're looking at self-awareness or self-management, maybe you have a student that you really want to focus on, but if you're looking at relationship skills or social awareness needs, which have certainly kind of arisen more so during our pandemic schooling, that might be something you choose to focus on in your upcoming lesson planning or unit design even. How to help kids to work on their relationship building or teamwork or communication with one another. So, I think as teachers, our needs change over time. So really we're here because you and your students deserve this. We're here because the connection between relationships and learning is real, it's research-based, it's grounded in how students retain information. But I want to give you not only the need for it, but also the solution. HyperDocs. HyperDocs are digital lesson plans. If you are brand new to HyperDocs, just a brief definition. It's a lesson plan that the teacher creates using any digital platform, Google Docs, Microsoft, and you pass that off to the students. You've pre-packaged your lesson in a way that is engaging and interactive and touches on the 4 C's, where students have a chance to collaborate, connect, create, all that good stuff. So HyperDocs are kind of like this super sneaky way that you can tuck in some of your wellness practices, and that's what I really want to show you in this webinar. Now, because this is not an interactive experience, I want you to be thinking maybe I'll pause, like go ahead and you can pause this webinar right now and actually take this next chunk of time to visit the resources I'm about to share. If you want to pull up a separate tab at home, that would be bit.ly/CASEL, all uppercase, CASEL, HyperDocs. And if you want, you can set a little timer for yourself and choose to explore these lessons that are curated here for you. So I basically sat down and collected a ton of HyperDocs that all kind of fit with these various core competencies. So if you're looking to build relationship skills, then you might look down here at some of these specific examples. If you're wanting to work more on social awareness, you might be using this awesome Humans of New York lesson that Kelly created that would take you to her lesson here. And you might be thinking, this would be really cool to kind of get my kids to really see themselves and see the community a little differently. Here's an example of Humans of Simi Valley, where the kids are going to create their own version of this. Okay, so this is an awesome lesson. But really helps with that social awareness piece. How to write an open letter, another great HyperDoc, where the focus is on this writing genre, if you will, open letter writing, but it's going to certainly help to also develop the social awareness of the kids because they're writing to some larger social entity out there. So what you can see as you start clicking into some of these is that these HyperDoc lessons might be content oriented, but they've got some elements of social emotional learning tucked in. So that is going to be what I hope you see. I want to pull up a couple of specific examples to kind of highlight what I mean when I say implicit instruction using HyperDocs. Okay, so I kind of just quickly clicked around at a few of those that I've prepackaged on that CASEL and the core competencies wheel, but I also want to show you some of these directly. Okay, so let's say you're teaching equations to little students, kindergarten, first grade. You might have, this is like the title of the HyperDoc. Of course, with any of these HyperDocs, we always encourage you to just click on File, make a copy. And once you make a copy of the entire presentation, you'll have your own version to work with to revise as needed, okay? So please note that you're always invited to do that. So I'm thinking, how can this math lesson help to teach my little students to develop their own kind of sense of self and worth in connection to others, which is really what social emotional learning is. And you'll see here, there's just this really kind of open-ended, inquiry-based, hey, what do you notice? What do you see? And then this kind of direct instruction piece has multiple layers to it in order to help the students see that this definition of what an equation is can be developed over time. You don't have to have it right away. And I wanted to give them different ways to see it because I recognize that students will understand this concept of equation by looking at these different visuals. So that's a great universal design for learning representation strategy, is to show the equation using different visuals. Acknowledging that students take in content in different ways. Sometimes it's that very simple recognition of learning that taps the hearts and minds of the kids. Then there's multiple opportunities to practice with the application of the second piece, inviting kids to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. This is super fun. You would put this into present mode, and the kids would have a chance to kind of offer a thumbs up or thumbs down. And if you're in class or on a Zoom screen or teaching, synchronously in that way, you could easily get involvement and participation. Is this an equation or not an equation? And if it's not right, you might include student voice and invite them to unmute or to even just share out loud or to turn and talk and say why this is not a true equation. So this is a super fun part of this lesson where the kids get the chance to speak up. And it's always fun to say why something's not true, right? In this part of the lesson, the kids are going to be actually listening to this incredible story. So this is kind of the heart of this equations HyperDoc lesson, and really why I think it really speaks to the social emotional piece. The students get a chance to write their very own life's little equations. So if you've never read this book or seen it, it's awesome. I've packaged it here using ViewPure instead of just sending kids off to the internet. But they get a chance to listen to the story. And then the premise of the story is they write these little equations, kind of like this is my example. 1 teacher plus 24 first graders equals room 10 Mustangs. Or I would go ahead and type in some of the class examples here. Super fun. Then they get to go off and write their own. They can do it on just a plain piece of paper, in their math notebook, or even online using Seesaw or whatever, but they get a chance to create their own life's little equations. So these are just fun, like low stakes method of teaching kind of like a really complex math concept for little students. So hopefully you're getting some ideas and thinking about how did I tuck in, kind of sneak in some of those social emotional pieces. Was it through choice, voice, defending your thinking to a classmate, listening to the ideas of others, or creating a little life equation that was safe and kind of like off topic from the math a little bit. Helps me get to know my students and how they write their life's little equations. So yeah, the next example I was hoping to share with you guys today is based off of this one called Solway. You'll see a lot of my HyperDocs are grounded in picture books. But this one is based off this beautiful text of the author Lupita Nyong'o, and it's just beautiful, beautifully written, beautifully illustrated. And the social emotional piece here is really grounded in helping, like the teaching point of this lesson, which is readers can understand the feelings of others by studying a character's feelings. So you just come right out and teach them that, like, hey guys, today I want to teach you that as a reader, you can learn about other people by studying characters that are the same or different from you. Also, a second teaching point is readers read with their minds and their hearts. And that's something that I would revisit quite a bit through different texts. Like we would keep practicing reading with your mind. What is your mind telling you? What is your heart telling you? And so you can see in this lesson that the students are invited to track the characters' feelings throughout the story, collecting images, text, all that good stuff, and then host a really, really wonderful discussion about this character, but also about other people in your life that you know. And the intention behind this lesson is to actually teach kids how to speak up if they see or hear something that isn't right, and thinking about how words can hurt or heal. Then they do a little self-portrait. This is kind of like the application of their learning. It could also be just an extension idea if you don't get to it. And then just having them kind of think back to that kind of ongoing teaching point that I would be incorporating into lessons over time. Like we're going to constantly practice reading with our minds and reading with our hearts. So I hope that you see how this isn't just a lesson on character change over time. It's a deeper level lesson that incorporates thinking about the feelings of others through this character's change over time. So you know, it's like taking your standards and just taking them and adding that social emotional layer on top. So just for the interest of time, I might just pick one more of these to share. Maybe let's go 11th, 12th grade science, just to do something totally different. This is a HyperDoc that you may have seen. This was one of our original Hero's Journey lessons that we created. And the content of this is solar energy around the world. How do we find solutions in electricity? And so I think as I quickly thumb through this HyperDoc lesson, you'll see that students are invited into this real world problem of not having electricity or access to electricity around the world. So this social emotional piece, if you think back to the CASEL core competencies, you can really see how this social awareness piece is a big part of this lesson. And even just thinking about responsible decision making, like we have a responsibility to others, right? So the challenge here is how can we harness the power of the sun around the world? Students are invited into this kind of unknown as part of that invitation into learning, and you've got giving them an opportunity to really study the problem in depth, create really practical strategies to build something that's going to work, and they come out on the end as kind of like this hero, if you will. I love this notion of getting kids to reflect on like what would have been simple, and consider how that complex that problem is truly around the world. It seems like such a simple solution, but why isn't it working around the world? Just really getting kids to think beyond themselves. So again, it's a science lesson on conservation, energy, light, all these other things, but it's really an added layer around considering the needs of others. And that's that social emotional piece. Although my life might be difficult, there might be others going through other things, and how might I be part of that? So you can see how when you're teaching with HyperDocs, you can have that implicit kind of tucked in wellness piece, and maybe it's just a simple reflection at the end. I hope that you would see that any and all of these have this beautiful social awareness piece in it. I love this narrative HyperDoc created by a good friend, Lisa Gardino, just getting kids to think about the moments in their own lives. What are the moments in your life that you find important, significant, and monumental? A birthday, a milestone, a celebration, just a simple day. What core values were shaped in those moments? This truly is getting students to think about who they are and their own identity down to their core beliefs and values, and thinking about your story. Your story could be simple. There's some incredible examples linked up here. So this is a beautiful HyperDoc that, again, it's narrative writing. That's like the core content, but it's also so much more than that. So I walked you through a few of these examples. There are many, many more available, and I would hope that you start studying HyperDocs through the lens of social emotional learning and asking yourself, what piece is tucked in here that adds a layer of those core competencies, or that wellness piece that you can kind of sneak in? How might my HyperDoc support the emotional and academic learning needs of my students? So I hope that as you were kind of sitting back and observing some of those HyperDoc lessons, you're starting to look at the lens of content, design, and delivery. I'm sure you have some things you're wondering. I'm curious to know how you might remix a HyperDoc lesson to include a social emotional element. Challenge yourself to take a core content HyperDoc and just remix it ever so slightly. Maybe you add in a reflection element. Maybe your engagement piece has like a different kind of image that is going to evoke some emotion for the students before they launch into that content. Here's kind of like my little, quick tips and tricks. Number one, don't forget to just engage them first. Draw them in. There's so many simple ways you could do that with an image, with a song, with a quote. Pull your kids in first. That's the first way to kind of like meet them where they are, right? Why do they need to learn this content? Why should they care? And then I think a piece that gets forgotten is, what is our closure? What is the end of that HyperDoc lesson or any lesson going to look and feel like? Is there an opportunity for reflections? Have I given students a chance to give appreciations to one another? Sometimes closing a lesson with some deep breathing, or closing a lesson with some appreciations for a classmate, can be exactly what is needed at that time. Also, my last tip to you is just to be yourself. If you need to laugh, share a joke, take a deep breath in the middle of a lesson, package a fun meme in the middle of your HyperDoc, do that. Do exactly what you would want as a learner. Don't forget to tuck that in to your lesson planning. I hope that seeing those examples is giving you some new ideas about how you can tuck in wellness into your HyperDoc lessons. You're always invited to join us at hyperdocs.co to keep this learning going. This is hard work. We're digital lesson planning. We're trying to solve some of the social and emotional needs of our students. We're working towards lessons that promote diversity, positive self-identity. We want community building, connectedness. We want to really draw out the issues related to equity. This is, hard work, but we get to do it together. So please join us at hyperdocs.co. We have so many different lessons available to you through our Teachers Give Teachers digital lesson bank. You can go searching for a lesson. But we just encourage you to think about how you might be a Mr. Jensen for someone else. And sometimes it's as simple as just being who you truly are and seeing the kids for who they are. And that might be just the perfect way that you kind of incorporate some of those wellness practices into your own digital lesson design. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you have some new ideas and you're thinking about how to teach the hearts and minds of your students and how to tuck in some of those wellness pieces into your HyperDocs. Thank you.